Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas. I'm a digital marketing specialist here at United Training, and I wanted to welcome everybody to today's webinar, Hybrid Work, What IT Needs to Know. We are using the GoToWebinar platform today for today's session, and we will be sharing this copy of this recording with you. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the questions option in your GoToWebinar dashboard if you have any questions at all. United Training is excited to present this webinar today. I will now hand it over to you, Eric.
Hello and welcome, and thanks so much for engineering today's webinar. As you know, today's topic is hybrid work, what IT needs to know. As for myself, my name is Eric Bloom. I'm the Executive Director of the IT Management and Leadership Institute, and very proud and actually excited to say that we're partners with United Training, and they're a great business partner of ours, and I'd like to thank you for on behalf of our institute for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you so much. As for me, I am a former CIO. I've written a bunch of books that you can see here. I've been a nationally syndicated columnist, a certified coach, professional speaker, and well, you can do the other things here. They'll give you a chance to look at it. But today's webinar isn't about me, it's about you. So what I'd like to do is I just like truly just to get to content from now until the end. Let's begin by talking about the future IT, not only workplace alternatives, but the drivers that are pushing it to happen within our individual companies. You know, there's no magic in our next slide here, that basically there's going to be three alternatives going forward. The first of which is to have everybody back into the office, which interestingly, there are a number of firms, even big firms, working to do that as soon as possible. Next is our hybrid. What hybrid is where you're going to have some people permanently working from home, or let me say out of the office, and other people either required to or on a rotational basis working within the physical office space. And lastly, fully virtual, which is basically, for the most part, continuing what we've been doing through, unfortunately, these past 18+ months. So let's talk about some of the drivers about where your organization or any organization is going to end up when we're the other side of this. First of all, it's going to be senior executive attitudes towards, making decisions towards virtual work. Now, that you could say to that from an IT perspective, is that just executives within IT? No, it's not. It's the senior business executives, the CEO, the board of directors, the C-suite. Certainly IT is a component of that. But at the end of the day, because IT reports into the CEO like, well, everybody else in the company, is whatever decisions are made by senior management, like them or not, will have to be followed to a certain degree within the IT organization itself. Next is the company's economic position coming out of COVID. So for some firms, that would love to have everybody back into the office. It's sort of by industry, by company niche. It's really been interesting to see. Some companies have been really, I don't want to call them, winners out of a pandemic, but let me say they've had dramatic revenue increases. There are other firms that have been just truly decimated by this, where, cash flow, sales in the last year and a half, not only have profits gone, but to keep the business alive, a lot of the investment in the equity in the firms have shrunk down. And that's just beginning to arise. Therefore, there's a number of companies that would love to bring everybody back into the office, but what they've decided to do rather than that, to basically save money, particularly when they think a lot of their employees would like to work at home and they figured out how to do it, what they're doing is they're reducing their physical footprint. In other words, if they had 4 floors in a building, they're going to 2 floors in a building because that's all they can now afford, or just to save money. And the other 2 floors are everyone that was on those other 2 floors will be working at home virtually, maybe even permanently. Next is virtual work possible in the company's product line? If you're an IT consulting firm and most of your people were around the country anyway, then very possible you can be, everyone can be 100% virtual. But if you're at a manufacturing plant and you need IT people there physically adjusting equipment and things along that line, then it sort of changes up based on what the company does, how many people can or cannot be virtual. What it also depends on is specific industry, specific technologies and industry trends. There are certain industries where just, well, everybody wants to come back in. It's been interesting to see, excuse me, what's been going on in the high tech industry is, for example, Google, Apple, other companies, making decisions, on how many people or if everybody to bring back into the company. And what's happening is a lot of employees are pushing back on that now and saying, hey, you want everybody back in the office, go for it. I'm going to work somewhere else. So even though sort of it's senior management and other people making this, they have to live with the reality related to employees' willingness to come back into the office. Because one thing within the technology space is it's hard to find quality people with the specific technology skills you need. In fact, there's a name for it. It's been around for many years now, long before COVID started, and that's called the war for talent. So anyway, we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we move forward. There we go. And so also that's going to be depending on the future IT workplace is what's happened to not only the physical footprint regarding employees, namely who can go back to the office, but also what has changed culturally and process-wise within the company. For example, companies, a year and a half ago had to say, all right, well, wow, we have to figure out how to be efficient working from home because God knows when this thing is going to end. So they modified processes. They improved the ability to provide technical support to people's homes. They did all of these things out of necessity in order to be more efficient. So some firms are sitting back now and saying, wow, we're pretty efficient this way. We've got a pretty tuned machine over the last 18 months. Maybe we'll just stay this way. Again, that's being done on a firm by firm basis. But moving to the next area here is, all right, the actual future of IT work. This is going to be really, really interesting based on a number of factors, actually, which we'll be talking about here. The first of which is that there's bad workforce news for companies that are late adopters to technology. For example, if you're 2 versions back, say on Oracle database or on anything, if you're not moving your applications to the cloud and the firms are moving in that direction, whatever it might be, whatever technology you're using, if you're a late adopter to that technology, then what's going to happen is that you're going to lose your key talent. The reason for that is because it's going to be, first of all, harder to hire top talent, which has always been the case. But the thing is let's say, for example, where my office is, we're based in Massachusetts, which is pretty much a high-tech center in a lot of perspectives. But let's say that we lived somewhere that wasn't. That if you had to work in the office, no matter how, if you were a really good techie and didn't want to move, then if you were a version and a half behind on technology X, you worked at the company down the street. But now so many companies are moving toward true virtual work that now sort of the world is your cloister, as they say. So it's going to be much harder to hire talent, your top talent, if you're not going to be on top of technologies because you're competing basically with everybody who's now going to be in a hybrid or virtual environment, even if you're in a hybrid or virtual environment. But it's really good news for companies that are early adopters or mainstream adopters of technologies. And again, that could be in cloud with AWS. It could be, the latest version of Workday. It could be, whichever area you're working on. Because, IT's returned to the office now, if you're an early adopter. What's happened during COVID is that it's really given IT, if they didn't already have one, a seat at the digital transformation table. I don't know if you follow the online websites like CIO.com, ZDNet, Computer World, those type. But there's been a lot of surveys that have said, from a digital transformation perspective, what has been the biggest driver of digital transformation within your firms? 90% of it came back as saying it's all related to COVID. They've had to do digital transformation, enhance their business processes, figure out new technologies or new things to do, come out with new products or shift the nature of their product because of the changes in the environment due to obviously COVID changing the business world. But from this, though, it's given IT once again for many years a seat at the business strategy table. Why has it done that? Because if everyone's working virtual, nothing can be done without IT's assistance. So, but with this higher visibility that IT has yet again achieved to the point of what it was really in the .com days many years ago, it's added opportunities for IT professionals. It's added to their overall morale of the organization, et cetera. Now, also it's created a wider talent pool. Again, if you're in a hybrid or a fully virtual scenario is selected by your firm. Why? Because if half your team is working, is working from home anyway, so what? If you're in Chicago, hire someone from LA, who cares as long as they're willing to work your business hours? That has already, been come to pass in a number of ways. So now let's look at basically issues that will be addressed by, or they're a problem for all companies. Whether they're in the office, they're hybrid, or they select a full work from home environment. There we go. First of all, there's going to be continual enhancement on the interpersonal virtual communication products, things like Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams. There'll be other products probably coming in to compete with it. They were always pretty good anyway, but the thing is now there's a real feature function war going on because everybody knows how to do this. I mean, my 90-year-old mom knows how to go into Zoom now that she does, just because we can get back together, she can use it actually to connect to family that we have in New York City. So as a result of that, there's going to be more and more investment in it. These tools are going to get better and better. So that's going to be part of the mix, regardless of what you choose as your workforce location. Next is that international competition, will want to hire your local talent. Again, why? If I'm in a small town somewhere in the Midwest that has a nice technology center in it, say, and I've been working there, and some company in Boston wants to hire me, why not? Again, if I'm just one more person in virtual, what's the difference? And there'll be also continually, no matter which one of these you go with, if you move everybody back in, then you're going to have people saying to you, oh, well, why can't people work from home? If you have everybody working from home, then people are going to be saying, well, isn't that hurting your innovation and productivity? So there's going to be a no-win no matter what you select. As they say, no good deed goes unpunished. So as a result, there'll always be, probably for certainly the foreseen number of years, this level of whichever you go, you'll have other people jockeying position doing things differently. We'll be talking a little bit more of that going on here. Next is a higher respect for work from home days. If you remember in the old days, and by the old days, I mean January of 2009, when, before all this stuff started. If I were to say that you were my boss, or that you were just one of my peers, and I said to you, you know what, I'm going to be working from home tomorrow, then what would happen is you'd look at me and you'd say, all right, glad you're working from home tomorrow. Wink, wink, have a good day off, right? Because that was a way that working from home was viewed in a lot of cases. Yeah, you're taking a vacation day that's not really a vacation day. And then when we worked from home, if we really did want to work from home, but we needed a day out just because we had 80 million emails to send or just a lot of knowledge work to do, what did we do? We made sure we emailed the office a whole bunch more than we normally would have, so that people actually believe that we're working. Well, now people get it. Everybody's been working from home and understand the value, the value that can be done, maybe in many cases being even more productive working that way. Also, I believe there's going to be a lot less business travel. Certainly salespeople will be traveling to offices, et cetera. But say I mentioned that I'm in Boston, say that you're in, I already picked on Chicago, say you're in Denver, I'll work my way west. That if you were in Denver, then very possibly if we were working on a project together, then once a month I would fly to your location. Just internal IT people working on stuff. Well, we've gotten so good at working virtual, why would I want to have to, the wear and tear of having to fly to Denver and do time changes and fly back? And why would the company want me losing 2 days productivity, a day on either end, and have to pay for my travel if we're right now working great virtually through Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, other facilities like this? So I think that it's going to be a long time, if ever, that business travel is to the levels that it was. Now let's look what happened. Let's talk about what happens if your particular scenario is where everybody, there we go, everybody comes back to the office. Now, in this case, what's going to be happening is you're going to be getting continual pushback from those employees who liked working virtually. Like, why do I have to come into the office? Hey, it's a 60-minute commute for me to get in. And, what I did for the last 18 months was I used my commute time to give me 2 extra hours of work. Why do you want me schlepping into here? Even though I enjoy listening to audiobooks on my way in and out, it's not worth your while. or it's expensive, or, hey, I'm paying $450 for a train pass once a month, to get in and out of the city. If I'm just as productive at home and you want me to come back into the office, you should pay for my commuting costs. These discussions, which never came up before, are beginning to arise. Also is, let's say that you have everybody come back into your office, and let's say that my company is hybrid or fully virtual. Well, if you have great people working for your firm, what am I going to do? Is that I'm going to use my company's virtualness as a hiring weapon to hire away your people. I'm going to say, hey, I know that you work an hour away and you're commuting 2 hours a day. That's awful. Work for me, at a little bit more pay or even at the same pay, and you can work from home. So there's going to be a definite, there's already actually definite movement in that, where companies who've announced that they're moving back to 100% into the office, where headhunters and other recruiters are starting to try to purge out their people. Also is if the company moves back fully into the office, from a cultural perspective, if not immediately, it'll probably go back to what the regular norms were before. So I would say to you, if you love working in the office and your company says everybody come back, probably some people will leave in the process. But if you love the culture there, it'll probably again be generally what it was before you left. But it will take a little while for it to get there. One thing that's really interesting is that people will enjoy it more, because the things that we took for granted, being able to go out to dinner, being able to visit a loved one in another state somewhere around the country, those things that we just sort of thought we could always do and can't. Everyone, at least I know, both in family and friends and business colleagues, are saying it's just wonderful to get back together, and things we've taken for granted, really maybe we shouldn't have, or now we won't. And lastly is, the use of video and enhanced communication in multi-office meetings. So let's say, for example, my office is on the first floor. Your office is on the second floor. You decided to work home today, and your office is on the third floor. So, what we could say is, oh, you know what, Joe's working from home, or you know what, I really don't feel like schlepping up, or I couldn't get a conference room, they were all full. Why don't we just do it on Zoom like we did 3 weeks ago when everybody was working from home? So these tools like Zoom, or the Microsoft Teams, etc., as well as Slack, which is sort of more physical, obviously. Actually, a lot of those attributes are now in Microsoft Teams also. But the idea being is using more of these in the workplace anyway. Just if you can't get we wouldn't reschedule the meeting. What we do is we'd say, oh, just do it virtual if the conference room's full. Now, if you're in a hybrid scenario, so obviously hybrid is where you have some people working in the office and some people working from home. This is going to be really, really interesting. And by the way, just if you have any question on this, moving people back into the office is going to be 10 times more complicated than getting everybody to move home in the first place. The reason is everybody moved home because it was the law. The governor of your state, or wherever, if you're in other parts of the world, the leader of your municipality, wherever it might be, said, except for people in these particular jobs, everybody has to work at home. So what did senior management say? They said, all right, whether we like it or not, everybody's working from home. So nobody could be mad at senior management for making these decisions because it was unrelated. But also, if people had kids now out of school, they said, oh, great, there's no daycare anyway, I have to be at home. It worked well. But now the decision to move people back into the office is 100% based on senior management decision. So in other words, the government can say that you can't come in, but then they're not forcing everyone to say, okay, mandates reversed, everybody back in the office, no matter how your company feels about it. So now management is in the position of having to figure out how to do it right and to be justified for it. So anyway, is that the first thing that you should be doing now in this role, and what you're going to be seeing a lot of, is what they call, creating an employee location criteria. In other words, you can work at home under the following conditions, or you have to work in the office under the following conditions, etc. It could be based by employee's choice. Some companies are doing that. Tell us where you want to work, and we'll figure out a way to make it okay. Some is by job type. Some is by department, etc. Certainly, you can't have the receptionist who sits in the front hallway working at home because, well, they have to be there to do the job. So all of that stuff aside. Next is the establishment of synchronous and asynchronous communication channels. like for example, and what the actual usage of it and how we're going to do it. Because what's going to happen is typically if you're working from home, emails are returned very, very quickly. Why? Because even if I'm in a meeting with you, like, all right, does anyone have their email up in their other window? But you could. So as a result, emails are returned much more quickly. When you're in the office, it's really frowned upon if everyone's sitting around a conference table, to be looking at your email under the table, doing the thumb dance on your cell phone there. All right. So as a result of that, is that people who are working in the office that have 4 hours worth of meetings aren't going to get back to people as quickly. So these two cultural divide items need to be figured out. Whoops. Next is definition of work and home. Oh, timing for exceptions. Okay, perfect. Next is that creating company-specific hybrid meeting best practices. So what that means is that a lot of companies are saying, hey, unless everyone is physically in the room, then nobody should be in the room. They're saying that to make an even playing field between those who are physically located and those who are at location. So let's say, for example, that there's 4 of us. 2 of us are physically in the office and 2 of you are at home. Then by definition, we wouldn't be getting a conference room with a speakerphone in it. We would just do it from our offices so that everybody can be on camera. So there'll be a lot of that going on going forward anyway. Next is, and this is going to be fascinating to see how this one rolls, is enforcement of home office work requirements. Now, what that means is what's your physical home office like? What bandwidth do you have? Do you have ergonomic chairs and tables? As an example of that, a friend of mine, his idea of the perfect working from home environment was on his big, nice, soft, cushy sofa with his laptop on his knees, basically, being like this on his keyboard all day for a whole year. And guess what? A whole day of this kind of posture, looking down, at your laptop like this, he now has shoulder and back issues, neck issues. He's getting the beginnings of carpal tunnel in his wrists. To protect our employees or your employees, you may want to say, hey, you're welcome to work from home, but this is what your office is going to look like, assuring that it's properly ergonomically designed. Next is you're going to have to bring in what's called hoteling and hot desking. The difference between them is, let's say, for example, that I work at home 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Well, you're not going to want to keep an office for me for that occasion when I come in. What you're going to want to do is maybe have a part of one of the buildings, one of the floors rather, so that if I come in, I reserve a room, and then I can come in and I have somewhere to sit if I have to come in for physical meetings or something like that. If you have to make a reservation, then that's hoteling. But to do hoteling properly is you really need a section of space that with the hope that people are going to come in and use it. Another thing that's coming up is what they call hot desking. Hot desking is basically where you go in and they find a spot for you. They say, hey, anybody? Oh yeah, Joe's out of the office today. Hey, you sure that Joe's out? Okay. Hey, Mike, why don't you take Joe's desk today? And what you have is you have a little thing to roll around, with your file cabinet stuff in it, or you just bring it all in your backpack. Gee, I almost said briefcase. I haven't carried a briefcase in like 15 years. I've had my briefcase has been my backpack. But anyway, a backpack that you bring in that has whatever you need in it for the day. Presumably your laptop, but with that, there's some technical implications regarding you have to be able to have either wireless in it or everyone in the company has the same docking stations. So if I come in from working at home where I have a docking station, I come in, I sit down in Joe's desk, I pop it in the same brand docking station and poof. But now that automatically gives me connection to the local printer and things along that line. And next is one of the biggest issues with hybrid is that you don't end up with with a bifurcated culture. Those who are in office and those who aren't. And those who are in office are the ones that get the best projects, and the ones in the office get the best promotions. The ones in the office are the ones who are not laid off when things get tough. So one thing that companies are going to be trying extra hard to make sure that works for them is what they call one team, any location. And to do that, that's going to be changing processes and all sort of items related to that. Now, if you're working and you make the decision to stay fully virtual, oh, by the way, sorry, the bullet point on the bottom I went by quickly. There we go. Too quick on the draw here. Or as they say when you make a mistake on the keyboard, that the technical issue is between keyboard and seat. But anyway, is that all of these are advantages, all of these advantages, plus the ones we're going to talk about next, for those that are fully virtual, will also be available to those who are working hybrid because, well, some people are virtual. So the first is, you'll be able to, for those who are fully virtual, can basically continue with the ongoing policies. It's just yet another day at work that nobody's physically coming into the office. But what will also be is there'll be continual productivity and creativity, concerns, and you'll be continually justifying potentially of, unless you can truly get a cultural environment around it to say, well, won't people be more productive if they all come back into the office? You probably already heard a lot of that stuff. It will depend on how good of a job your firm does in actually enhancing processes in a way to do it. The next is that it really opens you up to what I like to call time zone virtual banding. So what that is that, let's say, for example, that you live in Chicago, okay, or your office is in Chicago, is that your central time zone within the US. That means if you have people working virtual anyway, one of the big issues with working virtual is if you hire someone who's in England, for example, say working lives in London, then there's a much shorter time. Basically late afternoon for them is early morning for us. So if you're going to be in a meeting with them in Chicago, it has to be before 11 o'clock because otherwise it's after their business day. You get the shtick, the whole time zone thing. But what happens is that, say, if you're in Chicago and you say, you know what, we'll use time zone banding. Basically, people outside of Chicago, anywhere who work the same hours as you can hire anyone from, from northern Canada to southern Argentina, and they're all in the same time zone. And if you're willing to move just 1 hour out, then you can go basically for anybody who's central time from mountain time to the full East Coast. And it widens it. And like, for example, if I'm in Boston again, if I really wanted to work for somebody in Chicago, but they said, all right, Eric, but your hours are going to be 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5. If I was okay with that, that's cool. No issue at all. I get to sleep a little bit late, and I usually don't eat dinner till after 6 o'clock anyway. And if I'm virtual, I have no commute. So that's a pretty good thing. But think about it is that hiring it virtually, that whole idea of time zone banding. Next is the ability to hire people away from your competitors is enormous. So let's say, for example, that, that my firm, I required everybody to come back in, and I'm in Boston. You're in Florida, same time zone. You're following on the time zone banding. And you know that I have some great people that you'd like to hire away from me. It's going to be really hard for me to keep those people because why? Is because now you can hire people again from northern Canada to the southern tip of South America, and it won't modify your business model or the way that you work in business processes. So with all that said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to basically end with a quote. That quote being, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So I would say is that for your firm, for you personally, for your department, given the options, figure out what's the best for you and your team and try to advocate that internally, of course, if it's politically appropriate for you to do so. As we move now toward the end of our time together, what I'd like to do is that I'd like to tell you about a couple of the programs that we're doing, certainly in cooperation, and the way you will find out about these is to either go to the United Training website or to speak to your United Training representative. Is we being the IT Management and Leadership Institute, is the governing body for 2 certifications in IT management. One of them is called the ITMLP, IT obviously for, well, IT as the other one will be, but management and leadership profession. This is geared for individuals who are senior individual contributors, who are soon to be managers, to those who have up to 3 or 4 years of IT management experience. For those of you who are more seasoned IT managers, or what I'll call manager of managers, IT directors, senior managers, whatever you want to call it in that realm, this has more senior topics. Each of these are 3-day in length. I'm very proud to say that both of these certifications in November of last year were put on a list of top 10 IT leadership programs by CIO.com magazine. So with all that said, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me together with me today. And I'd just like to ask, are there any questions that you have on any of the material that we covered, or anything that otherwise that I could answer for you before we call it a day?
Hey, Eric, we actually do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So, in reference to the bad workforce for bad workforce news for late tech adopters, Roy asked, isn't it also more difficult to find IT talent to manage older systems and applications?
Yes, yes. Not only it was hard before, but now with hybrid or virtual teams, it's even worse. Because what will happen is that if you're think about it, if you're applying to two companies, and let's say you're a leading talent, you want to be on the edge of technology, is where would you rather work? A company that has the latest version or a company that's two versions back? Now, the reason the two versions back, I mean, the software might be great, but the problem is it dramatically hurts the marketability of the person working. One version back, everybody's okay with that. But two versions back is you'll be looked at now as being a little bit stale. Years ago, I wrote a column I used to write for IT World. My column was called Your IT Career. And I wrote a column named from a marketing perspective, your marketability, your technical skills has a 2-year half-life. What that means is if you took your exact skill set that you have today and you went and lived in a cave for 2 years, when you moved out of that cave and came back 2 years from now with exactly what you know now, forget about being rusty about it, that kind of thing, but the same skills, knowledge, everything else, is you'd only be half as marketable as you were 2 years ago. Why? Because new products have come out. Older products have come out with new versions of it, et cetera. So therefore is that your top talent will never want, unless they're desperate, will never want to go to a company where it's old technology unless their role there is to move it directly to the newer technology. And the people who want to stay marketable and are sort of looking around and seeing that they're not only will it be harder to hire talent, but you'll also eventually be getting into an attrition issue with your best people.
Perfect. And one more question. I know we're a little over time, but in reference to telling employees when to come back to work, how do you think larger organizations that are in the news, like Apple, should have handled transition?
I think it's the wild, wild west. I think that one of them actually said everybody back, and like I forget which company it was, and like 10,000 people, signed a petition that we're working so well at home. Why can't we stay there? I don't think companies know what to do. Is that if they've made the business decision to have everybody work from home, then it's just sort of a continuation. And there are firms that have done that were sort of leaning that way anyway. But the truth is, my advice for them: tread lightly and listen to your employees, because like I said, it's the wild, wild west. As far as handling it differently, companies say, our employees are our greatest asset. So I think that the only way, if you want to keep that asset working for you, is to try to figure out that happy medium with what you need from a business perspective and what they want, or are you going to go beyond that, and what they demand in order to remain employed within your firm.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Eric. That was a lot of great information. If there are any more questions, please let us know, people in the chat. But if not, we will be sharing this recording with you, and we just want you to enjoy the rest of your day.
Great.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much
Eric.
to everyone for joining us, and thank you so much for engineering today's webinar. It's always a pleasure to work with you.
Absolutely. All righty. Bye, everyone.